morning also in my name. So we have heard 4 very interesting, I hope, presentation, 2 with the large models where we use GloBiome for, I would say, very general question of the common agriculture policy, the climate change, which kind of policy mix can support, and then the results are showing the changes in production structure and in competitiveness and so on. Then second was very specific design of measures for protein crops, especially soya. And we have seen how we can, with this kind of models, we can see the economic and other environmental climate changes related to the change of policy. I think also very relevant. Then we have heard how to improve. This was the last presentation. This kind of models with the data and all problems related to this, because the data are the most important part of the models. And I think from the statistic or econometric or experimental economics, this is in fact 3 lines of not modeling part of the quantitative support. We have heard the case in France where we learned a lot how important it is to planning the research, to have enough time and resource. So now we have 15 minutes time to discuss, in fact, in more general way, how to improve strategic planning for decision makers, that they know how to use the tools, then researchers how to motivate them to develop and apply tools that yield useful results, and other stakeholders to understand all this evidence-based approach. All 4 presentators, Juliana, Zsolt, Pauline, and David, are here. I will moderate, and in the backstage, we have also Guna, one of the key modelists of the Capri system. We will have some questions regarding to the Capri. Juliana is sovereign to speak about GloBiome. But first, this panel questions, and then we will open the floor to the audience, that you can also go back to the presentations and or maybe to comment what we will talk now in the next minutes. So I will start with very simple question: why use quantitative tools in CAP strategic planning now, or in fact also later, and for what purposes? To convince any audience which is not familiar with them. So, Juliana, maybe you.
I think that using quantitative tools helps a lot to put into the prospect in a common language across different actors in the policy process. So for example, in the case of the Czech Republic, farmers often want to talk about who is carrying the burden of an implementation of the policy. Well, you have a Ministry of Environment who is caring more about the environmental impact of the things, and then you have an agricultural ministry that it has the role of trying to converge all of these views. So I think that quantitative tools allow to harmonize language and conversation between different stakeholders and different priorities within a country. And then for drawing lessons from the case of the Czech Republic, it seems to also be the language of the Commission. So for the country, it's really important to also have that language of quantitative tools when it comes to negotiating with the Commission and try to put in the table the national needs. So I think that that's one of the advantages of the quantitative tools.
Yes, I think we discussed also in the chat how it's important to have the quantitative tools, to have evidence-based approach for impact assessment, to understand the behavior of farmers, for the ex post analysis, especially with the econometric techniques and so on. Data. Data are the essence of quantitative tools, and we see that the demands, societal demands, are increasing. More and more data, better data, environment, biodiversity, animal welfare, especially new things are social indicators where we are completely in the less discovered field. But data needs to be collected, which requires resources, time, knowledge, investment. I think, especially the case from our Spanish colleagues from Valladolid, we can learn a lot, but also from the French case. David, what do you think? How we can convince farmers to be included in the data providing and the governments to ask and to invest, because here without investments there will be no progress.
Well, I think farmers, as any other individual, are not willing to share their private data.
Exactly.
So private data as individuals and as a companies that they are companies, so they only share the data when they are forced to do it, or when they obtain something in exchange of the data. So they are sharing data with the machines. So on the but the problem of sharing data with the government for them is that they don't feel themselves confident that what they are sharing, if there's going to be some penalty for them. So they are very concerned about that, because the regulation is so complex that even if they think they are doing the right things, sometimes they are not sure if they are doing it right, because there could be something that they don't know exactly and is not covered. So it's very difficult to build trust with the farmers to share the data when you are controlling them based on that data. So you can impose it, of course, if you have the political will and and you have the support to do it. You can impose a system like that, as it was tried to do in Spain. But even if you are able to impose it, you still need to know the limitations of the data that you are collecting, because probably farmers are not gonna tell you the whole truth of what they are doing. So from the quantitative perspective, I think everybody should be aware of the data that is based on, because probably some data could be useful for some analysis, but others no. And it's very important to know. I think it's as much important is to know how to use the tool and how to interpret the outputs, to know what data you are using and what you can expect from the data that you are based your analysis, because maybe your output is completely wrong because your data is completely biased. So that's my
And what the governments can do: force digitalization, force the laws where the farmers are obliged, but I'm not sure if this is the right way.
If the farmers, if you don't have the force to make it mandatory, you need to do some kind of survey oriented way of reporting, anonymize or something like that, or give them like some inside views that they sharing their data will make the government to be more accurate in their policy and so on. But it's something very difficult to convince them. So for instance, if we know that you are using this pesticide in this crop that is not authorized because the company didn't follow the process to authorize that, because it's your crop is a minor crop, we will take it into a consideration, and the government will do an authorization, express authorization for that crop. Maybe things like that. But I don't see that with the current situation and the CAP and all the controls that the farmers have. It's very difficult for them to trust in sharing their data.
Okay. Pauline, you had a very interesting case. what you learn.
Well, I agree with what David said. For experimental economics, for some of them, I know that what is generally done is that you provide the direct incentives to the people that you are gonna collect data from. In general, well, at least for some of those methodologies, is because it implies well, they have to come to a certain location. It requires a lot of time from them, and so you provide them with an incentive to mobilize them. But then I feel like the most important thing, as we said, is to really build trust with farmers, to express that the data that is collected, it's also in their interests that it's collected, that it's going to be used to well, build a better system is a bit too much, but to show them what interest they can have there, and to also obviously guarantee data protection and anonymity and etc.
Yeah, trust, I will say, is the final conclusion from data issue. The next question is, we know that quantitative models are quite demanding. So large and complex require adaptation to local condition, and in fact, the support from the main authors of the models. So you need the years to be able to work with efficiently with not to use but to develop the models, or to use the models in the more complex term like GloBiome and Capri. Developing simpler ones requires knowledge and good research support. So what would be the recommendation to decision makers and to the research groups? The decision makers use the models, especially the large one like we have here, but also the researchers, that they will adapt, adjust, or even develop own models. Zsolt, you made some good recommendation at the end of your presentation, but try to summarize both interests, researchers and government.
Actually, so as you said, it's quite demanding to work with Capri, because once the Capri uploads all the data, the CapMod file is almost a million lines of code. So to sort out things it's quite demanding, as you said, and as a beginner, you cannot make much use of your previous experience in other types of models, because Capri is made of different philosophy. So that's why you have to hook up with a core team, like what we did with Peter and Una at the Eurocare, that you need a real expert on the board to be able to start your project. Usually such projects involve, you can download the program freely and from their website, but you have to implement on your computer, in your computer system environment, and for that you need a guidance how to do that, this baseline calibration task one after the other. So there you need someone who has been involved for years already. So for example, in our case, we would be happy to share our experience, but we are not at the level to make such a deep, to have such a deep understanding of Capri, even though we are working on that hard. But for that purpose, if somebody is planning to establish Capri in his or her research institute or at the ministry somewhere, then you need this kind of connection. And concerning your question, how to get the ministry on board is also a difficult question, because their frame of thinking is different. So as I said, they are politically motivated, and that's hard to sell if you give them hardcore data and numbers, because they are just not so much interested in data, but they are interested rather in what political group they can make a contribution to. So it's a
Okay.
hard question.
Okay, so there should be the interest of the researchers. On one side, the government should be motivated, and we see in both cases they are generally motivated, at least a part of the government, but there is a not strong culture for evidence-based approach. So, Juliane, what will be your idea how to support the use of quantitative tools models?
Yeah, I think that in the case of the Czech Republic, I think that since the investment in such models is so high, it's strategic that the cost is assumed by research institutions rather than the government itself. And I think that from our side, our approach has been on understanding how to make their outputs the most accessible and useful for them, their questions, and to have at least the tool ready for be as fast and relevant enough in the policy cycle. I think that sometimes this tool lack that opportunity due to the complexity that Sol, for example, explain on how to put up to stay for running and providing results in a quick setup as a policy of this magnitude of the common agricultural policy requires, right? And another one, at least for the Czech Republic, we have seen that as also our research articles using the tool are being published, there is growing interest on actually understanding better the tool and what the tool can, which message and the data from the tool can provide for the policy part. So I think that in our case, we opted for the way in the sense that CzechGlow, Research Institute from the Czech Academy of Science, is the one hosting the tool for the country, and try to provide also traditional outputs from the scientific perspective, like articles. So the dissemination of the tool also takes more legitimization from that process, and the ministries could see that.
Yes, thank you. You both provide a very important point, that if there is no interest at the governmental side, and in the most of the countries in Europe it's like this, there should be motivation by the research groups, and they have to do the first step. They have to convince the governments, the decision makers, that they can provide useful and good approaches and evidence-based approach. I think this is one very important point what we learned from the study cases. In fact, this is then valid also for experimental economics. Pauline, we know it's one of the most strongest agriculture economics groups in Europe. Is dealing with, so RECAP is dealing how to support the decision-making process, designing the new measures to understand the behavior of the farmers and so on, but their real impact, except of course they are producing a good papers and books and so on, and this is the general knowledge which can be used, but the direct how to say, impact is relatively low. So is their obligation to go out of the, I will say, very friendly scientific research-based bubble to deal more with the governments, or they should wait? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with the points that Juliana raised. The issue, I think, for experimental economics is that they're really owned by the scientific communities, but they're not really adapted to institutional contexts, for instance. And so there's really a need for, as you said, they produce really interesting papers, scientific content, sorry, but it's not always understandable or applicable for institutional entities. And so there's a need to adapt the way we disseminate information to managing authorities for them to really see what they can get from the tools or from the experiments that are already conducted, and how they can really, well, it's important to produce, I mean, actionable insights for managing authorities. And also, yeah, on the way that the tools are used, the overall methodologies, they're really adapted to scientific contexts. It takes a lot of time. It's not adapted to policy cycles. So I think there's really a need for scientific communities and institutional communities to work together to try to develop some kind of in-between ground that keeps the robustness of the tools, but can allow them to be really applicable in an institutional context.
Great. I think I will not prolong the panel because this was the great statement for the end. So I'm finishing the panel, but of course you are there for the answer. So I'm opening now debate to the general audience. So you can ask even to particular cases presentation before, or to the statements what we discussed until now. I think Ilona, you raise the hands.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to compliment maybe a statement regarding experimental economics. There were several cases in the current programming period where governments either vastly overestimated or underestimated the amount of funds that will be needed for a certain measure. And this was actually also what you were testing in France, right? And I think this is especially the kind of problem that experimental economics is perfect for solving. So I guess another problem with experimental economics approaches is that I don't think that there has been a very high level of awareness among governments that this kind of tool exists to tackle exactly this kind of problem.
Thanks for these additional comments. I see that Professor Jongenel from Wageningen is raising the hand. Please, Roel.
Thanks, Emil. Sorry.
Microphone.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I have a question to David. Very interesting the case you discussed, and a question of me is that these digital farm handbook, field books, they give also a lot of information about, say, the spreading scheme, say, of farmers, and how sometimes farmers in the same area, how they do follow rather different approaches. At least that's what I got from some case studies we worked on with respect to pesticides. And so maybe a very interesting way for policymakers would be to have more insight, because at farm level, say, when you put restrictions on the use of certain pesticides, it's also very interesting to know about the flexibilities farmers keep or still have to find solutions. I assume that the information you have is also used, say, for these kind of studies, or isn't it?
Well,
David?
Yes, the digital field book has the information about the machinery they use, the parcel, the date, even the time it is. So with the machine, you may have lots of information, as well as the way it is spread and so on. And it's a parcel level. It means that that flexibility that you mean about is implicit in the way they record data in different parcels, what you say. And then there is another registry that's the whole of Spain. So when the farmer buys the products, the government has a registry of the amount of product that they bought, the date. But that doesn't allow, so, and that record is very accurate because all the times that they buy the product in the shop, they fill a form and that data is sent to the government. So at farm level, it's quite easy to have information and more accurate among them. The amount of products that the farm bought, it's very accurate. The problem is where those products are applied, in which crops and at what time.
Okay, thank you for precise answer. Yes, we have last minute. Are there any questions from the audience? Still? Yes, please. I think this colleague from Latvia, I'm sure. Microphone, please.
Hello, I'm from Bulgaria. Thank you.
From Bulgaria, sorry.
Yes. Institute of Agriculture Economics, Vanya Manova. I'm expert in this institute. Thank you for all presentations. It was very interesting and very peaceful. I have opinion and question maybe for all of us. Each country has its own set of specific issues when it wants to plan effective interventions for real needs. Your presentations was very interesting, but I ask how they could be combined in the future with another type of researches in aspects of the European Commission proposed integration of strategic planning into broader national and regional plans, because the regions will be more important, every of them in their place in their Europe map. And also in Bulgaria, we interested because we will organize focus group how to further develop the applications of the tools in the direction of researching real results in the direction of specific agriculture in the country, not by number of applications submitted for support. Real results.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we know that policy environment is changing, and this will be huge change. CAP is going out of their own bubble, which was grown 60 years. Now it will be a part of the national planning, together with regional policy or cohesion experts and institutions, and with home affairs, fishery, and so on. I think there will be a chapter on CAP, and which will be, in terms of strategic planning, a little bit more simplified. The proposal is talking about three main elements: priorities, interventions, indicators. But this is strategic logic. You still need the tools to see the impact assessment, to design the intervention, to see the needs, also with the qualitative measures, to evaluate them, and of course to adapt to the real conditions, not only in the country as such, but also the regional level. I think you are right, it will become much more relevant than it was before. So territorial issue, especially in the larger countries. In the smaller, it's not so important, but in the larger, or also in the middle, Bulgaria is somewhere between. This is my opinion. And again, this is the question between the researchers and decision makers. Nobody is asking for the moment to use the tools, to have better support or better evidence approach. But if the researchers are there, capable and interesting to do this kind of things, and they are also supported by the grants, by the research projects, they will do the job. But they have to convince the governments, that decision makers, that they can produce good results. On the other side, I think, especially in the east and the south, it will be very difficult to convince the governments that they can do something with the research results. Those told us very exactly, they have another logic, they have another priorities, and so on. But I think this is a game where we should enter and where we can do something. And I think it's important that the Commission is also supporting, that also the research donors are supporting these things, but it will be difficult. So maybe I try to make a bridge between your question and the panelists. Now I answer the question in my way. Is there anybody from our Juliana, Saba, Zolt, Zolt, Pauline, to add something? David?
Actually, I agree with you that it's hard to make this kind of bridge between government and research, but as the European Union is requiring kind of requirements that are hard to quantify, and in this respect, modeling tools can help, because otherwise the government couldn't have input from other resources.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We finished the panel discussion, and I give the word back to the Raquel.